Hey guys, so before I start the video, I just want to let you guys know that this video has a flashing lights warning. The lights at EVAC would flicker violently when recorded in slow motion, which made the footage borderline unwatchable. Although I did everything I could to repair it, it still flickers quite a bit. So just letting you know, whenever there is slow motion, you'll be seeing flicker. Alright, enjoy the video. Hey guys, how was your weekend? Mine was certainly eventful. I traveled out of state with HellTongue for the first time to compete at EVAC in Arizona. And also for the first time, I didn't completely redesign my robot like I did the first 3 times. Only a few small tweaks to hopefully make my robot a little better. My driving has also vastly improved. A combination of design tweaks, regular practicing, and fine-tuning the sensitivity of my controls have made HellTongue surprisingly controllable while still being stupid fast. Which sounds cool, but if you take a closer look at the design, you'll just realize that it's compensating for something. Because the weapon is so small, and I don't want to redesign my robot around a bigger one, I've been focusing on improving HellTongue's speed, grip, and controllability. HellTongue may not be a heavy hitter, but it will control the arena, and it will push you around if you can't break its contact with the ground. HellTongue is also supposed to be very durable. Its simplicity allows it to take a beating, but as long as no vital parts are hit, it will keep on driving. Theoretically. Although 3.5 hasn't changed much from version 3, I still had to take everything apart and put it back together again to include the new features. I was really afraid that I would somehow break my robot again each time I did anything to it. It felt like that this was constantly happening during the first 3 versions of building this thing. But actually, I was able to put it together and it f***ing works! I was able to build this robot without breaking anything this time. Let's fucking go. Okay, now let's go over those changes I made. First off, I never mentioned the dimensions of HellTongue in my last video, so here they are. HellTongue is 15 centimeters long, 21 centimeters wide, and not including the uprights, 5 centimeters tall. As to the changes I've made, you may have noticed these little holes at the top of the uprights. Normally, screws go here. I added these to prevent the upper portion of the uprights from flexing while being hit, so my own weapon wouldn't hit my own chassis again. For further security, I also moved the power switch to a safer spot and made the weapon chassis console a bit larger. As for the top plate, I actually removed the heated inserts that I originally used for screwing it down. They are prone to pulling out and hard to install, so now I use nuts that are embedded into the print itself. These are far easier to deal with and far less likely to be pulled out. This is actually changed what I do for version 3, but it couldn't. I also added 2 more screws to the top plate, as the flexibility of the Tegris sometimes left the internals exposed by the corners where there were no screws. I've also removed the side armor holes and replaced them with print modifiers. This allows me to fine-tune how thick the armor is, which was important because I needed it to stay thin so it would stay in the weight limit. The urethane on the wheels was also made thinner to reduce weight. I was able to save around 16 grams from the wheels by making the rims bigger and halving the amount of urethane I used. Because my wheels are so big that they actually wear down much slower than I was told they would. I brought 3 pairs of wheels to the event just in case, but I only ran 1 pair throughout the entire tournament and the treads are still visible on them. I've also increased the size of the carbon fiber bar, turning it into a plate that covers almost the entire floor of the robot to hopefully reduce flexing. And finally, to improve my drive, I made the magnets a little bit stronger and added little screws at the very front of the chassis to reduce friction with the ground. These changes worked really well for this robot, although the magnets could have been a little bit stronger. And that's all that has changed with version 3.5. Backwards. I may have only had 3 weeks to repair my robot for the upcoming competition, but because I didn't break anything this time, I had a little more time to practice driving my robot, which was helpful. But arguably the best thing I did to improve my drive was fine-tuning the sensitivity of the controls rather than trying to learn how my robot controlled to begin with. Because of this, I was now able to turn exactly how much I wanted to consistently, a feature that a lot of robots do not have. Getting to Arizona was a lot easier than I expected. I went with my mom. Not that mom, but a different mom. I have 3 moms, don't worry about it. We arrived at the airport around 4 hours early because we expected TSA to be a nightmare, but the guy took one look at my robot and let us through. We got to Phoenix and then to the tournament without issue, where we prepared HellTongue for another round of carnage. But before the fights, you know it's time for the special thanks. The Kinship Center is still sponsoring my robot. The Kinship Center is a social center for neurodivergent youth and young adults. There, they can meet like-minded individuals and gain valuable social experiences that can prepare them for the rest of their lives. At the social center, there are many activities to do, such as video games, board games, arts and crafts, Dungeons and Dragons, and possibly even building our own BattleBot. A big maybe on that one. If you're interested and live in Placer County, come check us out. Link is in the description. I'd also like to thank 2 people from the competition, Cameron and Al Hurworth. But to avoid spoilers, I'll get into what they did in a bit. With all that said, let's get to the fights. EVAC was my first ever indoor tournament. Thank God. It was f***ing pouring in Phoenix during our competition. Although I do wish they had the AC cranked up a little higher. Now going into the tournament, I was pretty confident. Despite being around the same size as SCAR, EVAC wasn't as competitive as some of the big California events. This didn't mean I wasn't going to go easy on my opponents though, especially because my first one looked tough. My first fight was up against Spot Boy, a thankfully not forked undercutter with a sleek profile. I had been brainstorming strategies to possibly use against this robot. I could possibly box rush him, or I could wait for him to spin up and then beam a wedge into him like I did with Sauron, or possibly even get to his sides, as I had a speed and agility advantage over him. However, the only problem is I never got to use any of these strategies, because as the march started, Bot Boy spun up to max speed, while I didn't. Me, being blissfully unaware, slowly approached him. I tried to feed my wedge into him, but then his weapon hit my weapon so hard that it instantly killed my robot. HellTongue is also supposed to be very durable. Its simplicity allows it to take a beating, but as long as no vital parts are hit, it will keep on driving. And just like that, any confidence I had in this tournament just as instantly evaporated. When I opened up the robot, I realized that the plug going from the battery to the switch had disconnected in a similar way to the fight with Zephyr. However, instead of a solder joint being broken, the black wire going to the switch was ripped in half. I later realized that this was because I mistakenly reused the same plug that was hit in the Zephyr fight, meaning the part was already damaged before I even put the bot in the arena. The devastating hit also caused the new upright bolts to pull through, forcing my uprights into a crooked position. Although I still believe that having upright bolts could help with this, it is apparent that they were not strong enough this time. I was able to fix these 2 issues pretty quickly. However, I then realized that a third problem. My receiver was dead. When I went to test my robot, it simply would not connect. I first thought that the BEC had died, but when I attached a dedicated BEC unit to the wiring, it didn't fix it. Meaning the only possible explanation is that the receiver was dead. I also didn't have an extra, so I went around asking. I first asked the creators of Botboy if they had one. They said yes, but it wasn't compatible with my transmitter. I then asked the creators of a different bot, Botulism, if they had a compatible one, and they did. It took me a while for me to figure out how to find it, but once it did, it worked good as new. On that note, I'd like to thank Al Hurworth and the other creators of Botulism. They actually left before I could give it back, but they said I could keep it, so it's all good. My next opponent was another horizontal spinner, Phantom, a tombstone-style spinner with polycarbonate top and bottom plate. Although it may have looked like an easy target, with the knowledge that my robot could just die, I was very afraid that I would be going home without a win. As the fight got underway, we spent a few seconds dancing around each other before Phantom hit the wall, slowing down her weapon and allowing me to push her safely into the wall. The resulting hit debilted Phantom, leaving her defenseless. I didn't have too much time to celebrate, however, because soon after, my weapon started to slow down as well. It ground to a halt after hitting Phantom and stayed that way for a few seconds. However, unlike Phantom, my weapon eventually spun up again. With it now active again, I landed a direct hit on Phantom's wheel, ripping it right off. With control over the arena, I continue to get small bites off of Phantom. But after a particularly good hit on Phantom, my weapon stopped spinning again. It also left me inverted, but thankfully, the ability to self-right without a weapon came in handy here. My weapon stayed off for a little bit longer this time, and I even inverted myself again. But then, my weapon started spinning again, and I righted myself. This cycle repeated for about the next 30 seconds. I'd push Phantom around, get a hit, and then my weapon would stop and start up again a few seconds later. But then, after running into a wall at a weird angle, I completely lost my left side drive. Thankfully, for some reason, my weapon never did shut off after this, but now we both couldn't move properly, and the remainder of the match was kind of slow. Because HellTongue had pretty bad gyro, I intentionally kept the weapon speed slow, as doing so wouldn't leave me at a disadvantage because Phantom's weapon was disabled. I was able to get a few more hits on Phantom, but before I knew it, the match was over.
2-1, and that is the match.
That was a pretty great showing from HellTongue, honestly.
It absolutely was. HellTongue.
But I think HellTongue in their last match just had a bit of bad luck where they got hit, I think, once, and then were just kind of done.
And they were just done, yeah.
Yeah, so it was nice to see them come out and actually be able to see them fight.
Yeah. All right, looks like the judges have decided. Put your hands together for your winner, HellTongue.
After opening my robot up, I quickly realized what the problem was. The telemetry wire for the left speed controller got caught in the weapon motor and was severed. I forgot to properly check to make sure all the wires were in place before I put my bot in the arena. Thankfully, it was only a matter of soldering the wire back together. The Phantom fight may have made me a little more confident about HellTongue's ability to take punishment. However, my next opponent was an experienced control bot and would need a lot more driving skill to secure a victory. My next opponent was Flip-Off, a spring flipper bot with wheels that put mine to shame. Despite having massive wheels, because they were made of foam they didn't have much grip at the ground, meaning I still had a driving advantage. But I was still afraid that the opponent's skill could overwhelm me, and that because of its forks, I would lose a head-on-head encounter. So as the match started, I played cautiously, only attempted to charge when he revealed a vulnerable angle. With this strategy, I was able to get some small hits on him, but then, I accidentally backed into him, allowing him to pin me on the wall. Thankfully, he was unable to flip me. After freeing myself, I accidentally rammed into him head-on, launching Flip-Off across the arena. It was at this moment that I realized that I could win a hit-on-hit encounter with this robot, and so I started to play more aggressively. As I started to charge more, I also realized that the massive red side forks that Flip-Off had used were actually a hindrance to him as they allowed me to have more angles to push him with. Now, the driver of Flip-Off is a very good driver. He was able to keep me at bay for a long time, and was almost able to topple me a few times. But because I was able to match his skill, and because my robot was much faster than his, I was able to dodge almost all of his attacks. I eventually realized that the thing that Flip-Off launches robots with was a tiny hinged fork, and that a single good hit would rip it right off, making it almost impossible for Flip-Off to launch me. It took me a while, but I eventually got a good angle on him again, hitting his launching assembly, and hit his fork, eviscerating it. The empty space where the fork once was gave me a really good angle for me to get some heavy hits on him, and eventually, one of them caused the launching assembly itself to fail, leaving it stuck in the air. There wasn't much Flip-Off could do at this point. I could outpush, drive, and attack him. Everything was set for another HellTongue victory, but all of a sudden, I high-centered on one of the foam pieces that I had ripped off of Flip-Off's wheel, leaving me stranded. But then, in an ultimate act of sportsmanship, Flip-Off freed me, an unexpected yet welcome gesture showing the creators' love for the game. At the time, I didn't really know how to react, so I just kept attacking him. The rest of the match played out how you would expect. I used the rest of my time to keep racking up small hits on Flip-Off for the remaining minute of the match, while trying my best not to high-center myself on the foam pieces anymore.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that is the match. Wow. All right, put your hands together for your winner, HellTongue. Yep.
I'd like to personally thank the driver of Flip-Off, Cameron, for allowing me to stay in the tournament. He said he did it because he thought it would have been a lame way to lose. I'm especially grateful because the next fight I did was definitely the favorite of the night. I was to face one of the top ranked bots in the region. Printed first, machined after. PFMA is another wide vertical spinner bot. Not quite as elite as Zephyr, but it has won a couple of events in the past, and I was quite worried of a repeat of my last fight at Scar. But I have watched a few videos of PFMA fighting, however, and I noticed that it has a few flaws in its design, like how it doesn't flip back over as easily as Zephyr does.
Uh-huh.
I knew that my best bet was to exploit these weaknesses, but I also had to be cautious in order to prevent destroying another HUD motor. I started by darting around the box, trying to get a good angle. I knew that going head to head with this guy wasn't a good idea due to my poor range, so I began aiming for his forks. However, I eventually realized that I could push him around, even while going at him head on, as long as I got the right angle. In the beginning of the match, I was able to get some good hits on PFMA. I was also able to push him around due to my superior grip. However, because of the way I was approaching him, PFMA was able to take a small bite out of my armor and hub motor. Despite me controlling the fight for around the first minute or so, eventually, PFMA landed a large hit on me, destabilizing my robot. He then used the opportunity to pin me on the wall and send me flying. PFMA then landed a third good hit. My armor was starting to split, but I knew if I didn't let up, I could win the match. HellTongue was able to recover much faster than PFMA, and I used this opportunity to get more hits on him. However, after a particularly nasty weapon-on-weapon encounter, my weapon motor started to rattle. PFMA had pulled the new upright bolts through again. He also caused the screws preventing the entire motor from spinning to rattle out, allowing it to spin and twist the wire inside my robot, all while PFMA was ripping more and more of my armor off. Eventually, the twisting of the wires caused them to sever.
And I'm amazed at the amount of floor grip that HellTongue has. Like, usually Print First Machined After can push people all over the place.
Yeah.
That's not happening right now.
However, my drive was still intact, and I could still easily push PFMA if I could get the right angle. I was able to pin him for a little bit, preventing him from spinning up his weapon. However, he eventually got on top of me and started to spin up again. I continued to try to push him, but not having a weapon has its drawbacks, with him eventually ripping off one of my forks. Said hit also inverted both of us. HellTongue was quickly able to self-right, and with PFMA still inverted, I used the opportunity to get a real pin on him. And once I released him, the match was basically over.
Well, it's going all to the judges in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that is the match.
It all came down to what the judges thought.
Woo. That was a good one.
That was a good one.
I was hopeful I would win, but it wasn't meant to be. I simply took too much damage. The match left the front of HellTongue completely shredded. The hub bars were severed, the forks were mangled, the armor was split, and the uprights were proved ineffective. Despite this, pretty much everything else about the bot was okay. I was able to prevent PFMA from reaching my sides, top, bottom, and back for the duration of the match. And despite all the heavy hits, there was no damage to the internals. I may have not won this fight, but this will definitely remain a highlight of my robot fighting career. I challenged a regional champion and nearly won. This is exactly what I imagined when I envisioned HellTongue going the distance. Even though it lost a fork in its weapon, HellTongue was still able to drive as good as before and maintain ground control. In fact, if I had just put Loctite on the screws holding in the weapon motor, I could have won the match. With me out of the tournament, I decided I'd try to fix my hub motor. The bearings were completely fine, so maybe I'd be able to fix it. It took me an hour and a half to figure out how to both solder the wires back together and then isolate them. But with the help of some super glue, I was able to do it. And once I replaced the chassis, I was able to get the weapon to spin once more and leave my friend absolutely dumbfounded. But wait, there's more. Because I was able to fix it, I competed in my first ever Beetle Bash with 5 other robots. I mostly did this to have fun, but I also did learn some things that I can improve with my robot. I'm just gonna play the whole thing in full right here, because it is a really fun watch. I hope you enjoy. This is what HellTongue looked like after the Rumble. I was actually surprised I ran with the weak wheels for so long, but then again, I never let those wheels get hit, so there was no way for me to know. Come to think of it, other than this, I've only had my wheels hit once during a fight, and that was during my first fight with F3.
Hey, editing Jacob here. After finishing the script and filming, I noticed something. This little hit right here, it's hard to see, but it actually wasn't cosmetic, because it actually hit my fucking battery. When I tried charging it, I got a balancer connection error, took a closer look and saw this massive fucking gash in it. I quickly threw it back in the fire bag and now I'm not really sure what to do. Definitely an important fix. I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, that's how HellTongue did at EVAC. I said I did better than my last tournament in the beginning, but I still technically got 9th place. But I did win more fights than the last time, and almost won it against a regional champion, so that's why I said it was better. As for improvements I can make, I'm not planning on doing much to HellTongue anymore. I fixed all the flaws that previous versions had, and any flaws that remain can only be fixed with a complete redesign of the bot. So I'm just going to make an entirely different bot. You'll be seeing that in 2026. As for what I'll be doing, I'll probably be making the upright screws beefier, and the wheel hubs made for those created for combat robotics. As for the next competition, it'll probably be the NorCal Robotics Expo held at my very own Sierra College. I might be going to the Bell Brawls, but I'm already on the waitlist for that, and it's in like 2 weeks, so probably not. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in Hell.